Good morning and welcome to this Construction Management and BIM Plus webinar. This session is entitled Clarity over Clutter, Why Information Management Must be Reconsidered. It's in association with IdeaGen Mail Manager. In the webinar today, you'll understand the less is more approach being taken by two digital construction consultants at WSP and how they're eliminating data redundancies and repetitive processes. It does not necessarily require the use of software. It can involve the dynamics of people interaction, refining communication with peers, or streamlining steps. IdeaGen Mail Manager in the second half will focus on an often neglected part of information management, email management. And there'll be a Q&A session at the end. Let me introduce our speakers. From WSP, our two digital construction consultants are Rob Brandin and Melania Bergner. From IdeaGen Mail Manager, Hugh Knipe, Senior Client Manager. And I'm Justin Stanton, Editor of BIM Plus. I'm your chair this morning. Before we dive into the webinar, there's the usual housekeeping to go through. So please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions. The panel will address those questions during the Q&A session at the end. You can pose questions as yourself or anonymously. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand to watch via the original registration link later today. There is 1 hour's CPD credit for those who complete this webinar live. CPD certificates will be issued later today. You can only qualify for a CPD credit if you are watching via your own registration link. That's enough of that. Let's crack on. So, Rob, I will stop sharing my screen. And if you'd like to turn your camera and mic on and share yours, and Melania as well.
Thank you, Justin. Let me know if you can see my presentation.
Perfect. Yep, that's great.
Yep, great. So I think it was a perfect introduction, Justin. This is not about having a very complicated workflows. This is not about using specific software. It is just about having like a perfect management or reconsidering the way of how we do things. And this is along with my colleague Melania. We are both digital construction consultants working for WSP, and we do BIM and information management workflows. And Melania is also an advanced data analytics professional that he's doing all these integrations and making sure that everything is like very smooth and simple. So the reason of this is not the what, is the why, and that's why for us is why we do the services this way. And there are two main reasons. One is to work more effectively, and the second one is to transform the way of our projects are planned, managed, and executed. Over to you, Melania.
Thanks, Rob. So welcome everybody. At first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we were when we were finding these gaps, and how do we get where we are at now. So basically, we identified 3 different kind of challenges. First of all, understanding where were our gaps, so where were we not failing, but maybe not giving our best. How do we identify these reasons? And we outline this challenge and how to be able to maybe minimize all these things that will happen into our project. So basically, then review on how to implement this. So we identify this into between 3 steps: how we can find these gaps, bridging these gaps, and then how we implement this. So when we move to the next slide, please, Rob. Yeah, so basically this webinar will have 5 parts. At the beginning, we will look into BIM documentation, how we look to simplify this and avoid these very, very long and hard to read documents. Then we will look into data management and validation, how we manage and how we collect our data. We will move then to data visualization, how can we communicate this to BIM users and to non-BIM users. Then we're going to have a section on BIM coordination. How can we embrace this collaboration? And then a couple of thoughts about the simplicity and how to produce this information. We go to the next slide, please.
Thank you, Melania. So this is document simplification, and it's about all, I mean, it's quite simple, how to simplify the documents. I don't know, I'm sure all of you are just dealing with documents that are like very, very lengthy. I had BEPs within our project that there are like 100 pages, and not just the BEPs, EIRs, exchange information requirements that are very, very lengthy, or other documents that, you know, they are very, very long and you know, difficult to read. So the idea behind was to make sure that these documents are reduced. And this is not about cutting corners, by the way. This is about making sure that the information that is important is in the document, and all other set of documents or standards can be transferable to a pool of documents. In this case, it could be a CDE, or it could be in a different place. This is completely up to you. But the idea behind is we need to make sure that we have a dynamic BEP where all these common information can be go from one project to the other, and then you reduce the pages of this. And we are doing real case studies. We don't have like a theory. We have the practice, and one of these is a video that we created, and it's related to a project. That project is Broadgate Tower. This is in London, and it's in Liverpool Street. So that document was 50 pages long. And what we did is just to reduce this into a 10 pages long, and adding this information that is not essential to a pool of documentation, you know. So for example, you have a link, the project standards, all these project standards can be transferable from one project to the other, like the ISO 19650 series. You don't need to add this into your BEP. You need it, but you don't need it into your BEP. So that is the idea. The idea is to convert this BEP document into a useful document, light document, and not a textbook, you know. So that is the main purpose. And in here, for example, you have the rebate stages as well. So the rebate stages, instead of just adding this into a separate document, we keep it in there, but you hover over and then you see the information there. This is quite useful and very handy. And it doesn't need to be everything into a PDF. It could be an Excel. For example, the roles and responsibilities, when we agreed with them, with the project managers and everybody, we set up an Excel with the responsibilities. We created that document, and then through a link you can get access to this. Simple, easy, and everybody can get access to that. Then we have other, like for example, workflows. This is a link inside of a link. So you have the design coordination process map, and inside of this process map you have links to, in this case was New Format Connect, which is a coordination tool through the web. So you can get access to all the issues and the statistics and everything. And it's for everybody. It's not just for the BIM managers or BIM related people. This is also for people that they are not into this. QR code as well. So you hover over and you get a QR code, or if you like, you can click on this element and you get access to the 3D model. I think this is one of the most powerful things, because again, everybody can get access to this. It's not just the BIM manager that hasn't got an idea how to access to this. So you have this all prepared, and this is the idea behind, you know. So yeah, at the end of the day, is to make your life easier, is not to make your life more complicated. And you can see that this can be done by everybody in this BIM and information management realm, and the rest of the teams can get access to that. And data management, this is over to you, Melania.
Thanks, Rob. So on the data management side, if we go to the next slide, we're going to review where we will get this data from. So that is a very important one. We all prefer to join the projects at the beginning, of course, but in some situations you will join project in stage 3, in stage 4. It's depending, of course, of the nature of the appointment. However, we think it's very important also to sit down and make sure that you have a strategy of where you will get your data from. There's several tools that we have used in the past. For example, we have data coming from AFCs to Solibri. We have data coming from CDs. Some CDs have more features than others. And in this case, for example, in WSP, we work a lot with Autodesk Construction Cloud. And the reason why I tend to work with CDs this way is because you can work with models on the cloud, and that means that your information will be more up to date and you will be more in control of what you have instead of working with a standalone copy. So, for example, on this side, I have put a star diagram of all our data in one of our dashboards. I always try to make sure that I kind of hold a simplicity of my data model. And I know this can look a little bit complicated, but it's actually no. We're basically giving a main key to all our data. So we will, for example, use the discipline architecture to filtrate all our data, which means that we are able to communicate the information in a way that everybody can understand this. So if we go to the next slide, for example, on this situation, I think this one, it was kind of important one because in my opinion, is that we cannot really rely our communication or our work to spot checks. We need to make sure that we have the data to back up whatever we say. I've seen so many reports when maybe they have a comment saying COVID data is not complete, and I always think how useful is that for the design team, because if we have 20,000 components, how can we collaborate in a way that they know where the gaps are? So we go to the next slide, please. So this is when it can become a problematic result, because if you don't arrange this data, if you're not able to collect this data properly, you will be reporting garbage, basically, because you will be reporting things and you may not looking at the data in the right way, or maybe you're reporting that the information is not there because you don't know what it is, because maybe the architect populated the information in one place or in another place. So that is why we think it's very important to make sure that you can work with your design team and you can design a scheme for your data. So in order for the project also to succeed, you will get better results and they will get better results. So we go to the next slide, please. So for example, in here, we have a very simple scheme. That's something that we have done for one of our projects, for example. So we work with Autodesk docs. So we have the models on the cloud, and basically we have a very basic Dynamo script. Then what it does is then exports all the schedules. We have prepared our share parameter schedules with the team, which we have designed from our web and our EAR, whatever is required, all the information that we need to provide. What happened with this is that we will be doing we will be filtering the information that we require at the beginning, and also the teams knows where the information needs to be populated because they have the share parameters, they have the schedules, so we know where the information is. This is basically a Dynamo multiplayer. What it does is you can schedule this Dynamo script to be run in all our models in the cloud on a Sunday, for example. So you will get all those text files that you can see at the bottom. Then they say WSP model data level schedule, for example. And then those ones you can analyze in Power BI. In this situation, we were doing, for example, the level of detail. So we were looking into different parameters, and they needed to have a keynote. They needed to have, for example, the family type or whatever is being decided in your project. Some projects would require more parameters to be completed than others. And then you can report back to the team and you can say, well, you have 400 generic models, or you have all these unpopulated parameters. You can go an extra mile and you can also validate your data a little bit more and do more exploration and say, for example, these have been populated, but they have an unclassified or NA, and you will, of course, decide if it's acceptable or not. If we go to the next one, please. This is another example. For example, this is a very big project that we had. So basically, when WSP joined this project, it was something like 7-8 plots in London, a master plan, hundreds of people working on the project, many as ACC sites, and of course, we were the digital construction team in charge of the CDs. And what happened is that we were getting several emails from people asking us to do things for the CD, but not providing the right information. So one of the first things that we did when we joined the team was to provide a form. Then it had the required information. Then it will tell us what plot was, what was the nature of the information that they needed, what was the level of permission that they needed. So then they will complete that form, and that will trigger Power Automate, which will we create a SharePoint list, which we will access on a daily basis, because every time that somebody creates a new request, we will get an email, and we will be able to resolve these queries because we will have all the information at the first attempt. And then once we click in resolve, that will trigger Power Automate again, and they will receive an email automated email from us saying that the request has been resolved. So that really helped our team, because you avoid that repetition and that back and forward from emails, and you basically put the time, do the work now. But that means that then you can relax, and also you have a control of how many tasks you have performed for the project. So if we go to the next slide, please. So I thought about putting this image here because I found it quite interesting. Just because something worked 20 years ago and it was excellent, and maybe the way it works were that way 20 years ago, doesn't mean that you cannot use the tools of today to master what you're doing. And I think lots of people is quite reluctant to this, because this is the way that we always did it, and it always worked, and the clients always like it. But at the same time, by changing small bits of the way we work and sharing this with your team, you can structure a better approach, and you can innovate, and also maybe use your time they use for repetitive tasks to do something more creative or innovating than is basically.
I think we've lost. Well, I think we've lost Melania. We lost you there for a second. So yeah, but you're back now.
Oh. Yeah, Melania, we don't hear you. All right, so I can carry on if you like. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Rob. Yeah, we can see Melania, but we now can't hear her.
Yeah. So the next one is data visualization, and this one pretty much is just how you get a technical report instead of having like many different pages, in one report. And it's the same approach as the one before. Instead of having like, I don't know, 50 pages of an end of stage report, we provide like a dashboard, and this is more an interactive tool. So we provide the link, and everybody can just get into this link and can get access to any of the ideas behind, and this is very useful for not just the BIM related people, but also for people like project managers, and depending on the person, depending on the role, they can see a different type of information. Hey,
can
Melania.
You hear me now, Rob?
Yeah, we can hear
Sorry
you.
about that. Yeah, I can carry on. I don't know what happened there. So basically, yes, this slide is what it shows. Then some people will need to be the high level approach, like the PM or people working on the project, which you can report on how good, for example, the KPIs of your project are performing. And if we go to the next slide, we can see other nature level, other kind of dashboards that we have provided. When we check COVID, we check health of the model, we check the TIDPs, the MIDPs, and that is when it becomes more technical and more detailed. But that is where basically the design team needs to see. One of the things that I like about these dashboards is that they're interactive, so you can see the data behind. It doesn't really say, oh, you have failed, or this is not completed, or this is, you know, a 90%, but you're not telling them behind how do you do your metrics sort of thing. So that is why I like to provide dashboards for projects. Of course, you can provide a static copy of your report, but then a dashboard always improves your delivery. So go to the next step, please. So yes, I added this visual here because I do think that is important. We cannot really rely what we do in spot checks. I've seen it so many times, saying, oh yes, have a look and see if everything is completed, and I think that it's not good for our job. I think we need to have our data, and if we're challenged, we can always share the information, and it's very important where we get that data from. So that is one of the most important things on the project, to do that setup. Even if you join late on a project, use your first meetings to see where all this data is coming from, because that will take your project to a success, and that is what is the important thing. The client will be happy, and you will be happy. There is no value for us to report on something that is wrong if we are not giving any value to the design team. So we go to the next one.
Thank you, Melania. Yeah, this is for me, model coordination. And we tend to separate model coordination and information management. And I think it is, even within our scope of services, we have this. One of the services is model coordination, and the other one is information management. But to me, it's all together. It's about crunching data. This is about data management, information management. And when you get different models, we all know how this works. You have the discipline models, all separated, and then we put all together. This is a federated model, and then after a specific period of time, you agree to have these coordination reviews, which is just to go through I don't like to call it like this, but they call it a clash detection meeting. This is not a clash detection meeting. To me, this should be more a coordination meeting, and try to understand how the information that we have and how we convey that information is going to all the consultants. So I've seen many times this type of meetings, and you see the green and red stuff. That to me, it doesn't say anything, because it hasn't got any context. The location is missing. You see in these images that you see like a door and a duct clashing, but it doesn't tell you anything. It's just telling you a clash. But where is it? Is the first question that I, when I going through this coordination, they ask, sorry, where is it? At what level we are talking about, and can you give me some context? So what we need to do is to first digest all this information for them, and then we provide these in the coordination review. And also we need to take into account that this usually is a 60 to 90 minutes meeting. So in 90 minutes, you cannot go through every single clash. So you need to make sure that instead of a clash, you go through an issue, which is more important. The difference to me between a clash and an issue is that the issue is probably a group of clashes, and also it is important for the next following weeks or days, you know. So these type of figures, they are meaningless, and this means no context, and that implies lack of effort, and implies or gives more work to the task teams. Through ACC, this tool, the ACC platform, Autodesk Construction Cloud, is giving us like 1,000 of crashes. This is real. This is a project that we have in Israel, in Vertical. Sorry, the name is Vertical, and we have 50,000 crashes, 60,000 crashes. That is important, but this is not what ACC is giving to you. What is giving to you is something without context, and then you need to provide like the context to this. And the idea is very simple, and this is what I apply to my workflows, and it's very, very simple. Again, this meeting is about simplicity, and what I do in all the issues that we create is just to have 3 different items within the within the title. So within our title, we always put the location, we put the level, the location or the area, the zone, and the short description. So we need to prepare the ground first. We need to establish the areas and location, and we need to focus on small batches and issue no clashes, as I said before. And this will give us like consistency to everybody. At the beginning, you need to set up the ground, of course, but as soon as they are used to this, you don't need to ask for the area, the location. They will understand that just reading the title of the issue that you provide, you will understand where you are, at what level you are talking about, and a short description of the issue. And this is what we do. I mean, we are using New Format Connect. We are not a vendor, so we are not just giving some publicity to this. You can think about any other platforms that you use, but the important thing is, as you can see in there, within the title of this issue, you provide these 3 parameters instead of these 3 parameters, because it depends on the project and the teams. It can be something different, but the idea is to make this simple and be consistent. This is key, and this is pretty much all about information management and why we need to reconsider everything. But these are my last thoughts about simplicity. And this was a presentation that I did for the Houses of Commons. So these people are not very techy, and I was asked to prepare a presentation for these people that it was related to building information modeling and information management. So I prepared different slides. One of these slides is the one that is in front of you. And years after, I realized how difficult it was for them to read this, and it's very simple. If you see this slide, you don't even know where to start. You can figure it out, but if you are not a person that knows these type of things, like the wedge about the information management, or the client requirements, or all these acronyms, OIR, AIR, EIR, is very complicated, and that's why this is my last thoughts. PowerPoints are very easy for the author because you know what you are doing, but it's very hard for the audience. So what we need to do is to avoid too much text. It's not a teleprompter. These PowerPoints are not a teleprompter, so we don't need to put text and read these through the whole presentation, because first of all, it's not natural, and second, it's not very efficient. We need to avoid bullet points as much as we can, and we need to simplify the message. Within the same presentation, I had this slide, and that slide was something that they were asked specifically, and they said to me, "Can you please prepare a slide that explains the advantages of having 3D modeling instead of 2D drawing?" And at the beginning, I prepared this presentation like something a bit crazy. Now I'm thinking about this, and it was like a screenshot of the 3D model with all the parameters and all the features of one specific software that I was using. But then I realized this is not gonna be good. These people are not techy, as I said to you guys again. And my idea was to have a 2D view, and this 2D view illustrates how complex can be something, because if you have the front view and the top view on the right hand side, you see the 3 different possibilities. So 2D views are something that has different interpretations. So it can be like a visual complexity that we need to decipher. It's a perception of reality. It highlights the 2D drawings can be misleading or insufficient, and the clear message, So, and this is a simple figure. Imagine when you have this type of designs, this type of architectural drawings. This from Frank Gehry, and if you know Frank Gehry, he's a very famous architect. He's doing very quirky and complicated design. So that's why we need 3D modeling, and that's why we need to simplify the message as much as we can. So we need to move to the 3D. Of course, the 2D is necessary, but we need to simplify everything as much as we can. So these are our last thoughts, and yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Rob, Melania, thank you very much. And possibly the first time since we've been doing all these webinars that we've had Super Mario appear. So thanks for that. If you can stop sharing your screen and turn your cameras and mics off, and I'll ask Hugh to turn his camera and mic on, and Stacey to share her screen.
Great, perfect. I really appreciate that, Melania and Rob. I definitely learned a fair bit from that presentation, so that was really insightful. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Stacey. Just to kind of introduce myself, as mentioned earlier, my name is Hugh Knope. I work for IdeaJ Mail Manager, and we mainly work with architectural, engineering, and construction firms to help them unify their project information. So to kind of begin with the slides, we generally see that the technology landscape globally is changing at an ever-increasing speed, and this is no different within AEC industries. I'm sure you've noticed that in your own work, technology is continuing to rapidly evolve and drive the AEC to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. Today, there are numerous examples of how new technology is revolutionizing the AEC, including the use of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and BIM, as we just heard about. And it's no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, with kind of teams either working remotely or in a hybrid working environment, that it's becoming more and more difficult to access project information. And professionals like everyone on the call today rely on strong, consistent communication. This might take the form of pitches, winning clients, and day-to-day communication with your colleagues. The days are gone, or at least limited, where you can turn around to the desk next to you and ask your colleague to help you find an email, for example. What this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information that they need, and they are left out of the communication loop. As you can imagine, this is a huge problem. We saw that in 2023, there are over 347 billion emails sent and received every day. Email is still the most commonly used communication and collaboration tool across the world, but it's the one thing most people manage differently, which creates huge risks for the future. One of these risks comes in the form of project rework. A recent study found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs about $62 million every year on average. Rework doesn't just waste your time and money, but can cause huge communication breakdowns within your team and with your senior executive teams and stakeholders as well. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So here at Mail Manager, we run an annual survey called the State of AEC Project Management Research Report, which aims to discover the project management and collaboration challenges facing businesses globally in the AEC. The last report we ran explores how firms manage project information, where they store it, and how they go about retrieving data when facing legal disputes. Plus, it also provides insight into how the industry has been affected by the current global economy, including the ongoing cost of living crisis, supply chain issues, and changes within the latest building regulations. As you can see on screen, for the 2023 report, we surveyed over 550 AEC leaders from businesses around the world, with the majority of respondents coming from the United States and Canada. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So to summarize the main findings of the 2023 report, firstly, we saw that the majority of firms cannot easily access their project information. We found that only 10% of respondents were not concerned about the accessibility and visibility of their project information. So most still see this as a big challenge. Secondly, over a quarter of organizations are at risk when staff leave the business. Our research has found that more firms are aware of the importance of filing emails as part of the offboarding process when people leave the business than last year. In 2022, less than half of respondents indicated that employees were required to file all project-related emails into a central location. This year, that number has risen to 58%, which is great to see. But unfortunately, 28% of businesses still do not require emails to be filed, and so this information is lost. Thirdly, disputes are continuing to rise year on year. In our 2021 report, 63% of respondents experienced some form of dispute in the business, and this year, that number has risen to a disturbing 91%. Project scope changes and payments continue to be the leading cause of disputes. Considering the majority of project scope information resides in emails and formal documents, and firms, as we've talked about, cannot easily access this, it's hardly surprising that they are continuing to dig themselves into trouble. And finally, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool in the industry. For the purpose of our session today, we'll only be focusing on the disputes angle of our research, but we will be emailing everyone a copy of the full research report in the next few days. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So according to the World Bank, 2023 was the second year of sharply slowing economic growth, only overshadowed by the global recessions in 2009 and 2020. In the AEC, we're still seeing trends where costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are large staff cutbacks. Even larger global firms have reported huge drop-offs in profit as their staff costs are still increasing. And unfortunately, more firms are going into administration than ever. With so much uncertainty and so many people leaving businesses, there is a strong need for organizations to think about their information management. How can you be sure that you have access to all documents and correspondence if staff are to leave the business? Considering 28% of businesses do not have email filing as part of their offboarding processes and 81% use email for the majority of project correspondence, thousands of firms are at great risk of losing information. Even more concerning is the finding that 55% of those surveyed indicated that they do not have any email management systems in place. I'm sure everyone on the webinar has heard or read that email is dead, but at least in our industry, these claims are inaccurate. In 2023, 88% of survey respondents indicated that their overall volume of emails has increased in the last 12 months. This is a stark increase from the year before. And the contents of these emails are more important than ever, with 11% of people claiming it is now business critical. On top of this, almost 2/3 of AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails from past projects, with only 2% having no need to do that. Over the last 3 years of this research report, these numbers have remained consistent. For many firms, emails and keeping them well organized and accessible is not a consideration until things go wrong. And as we can see, they hold vital information that could mean the difference between winning and losing a dispute. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Unfortunately, we're seeing that project costs are continuing to spiral, which has led to an increase in disputes within the AEC. Our research found that only 9% of people surveyed have not experienced a dispute in the last 12 months. 63% of organizations reported experiencing a dispute in 2021, and that number has risen to 78% in 2022, and the 91% figure I just mentioned in 2023. The top two causes were issues related to project scope changes and chasing payments. Unfortunately for the industry, issues relating to project scope are continuing to gain momentum. Why? We're thinking that this is because the majority of information, 85%, relating to these project scope changes are stored in email and formal documents. To break this down further, 12% of project scope changes do not reside in the digital space at all. And shockingly, 11% of respondents highlighted that the only place that they are kept is in the project manager's head. In 2020 even, pre-COVID, this was 6.2%, which shows an alarming increase of AEC firms not formally recording project scope changes in the last 3 years. With findings like these, it's hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned about their project information not being readily available or accessible. If we go on to the next slide, please. So we are consistently seeing that failing to make emails visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues that result in a legal dispute. According to Arcadis's 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report, the global average value of disputes was $52.6 million, with an average length of 15 months. Firms cannot afford to let information like email correspondence slip through the cracks. We've seen a leaky bucket of emails negatively affecting AEC firms globally recently. Firms must be aware of their corporate history and be able to prove everything that's happened on projects, especially as stakes are so high. Given the nature of the industry you operate in, Firms need to guarantee information visibility and accessibility to ensure they are making the right decisions. In the best cases, poor information management costs firms money, but in the worst, it makes people unsafe. Given the size of the global disputes environment, the cost of mismanaging emails is immense. But with proper email management processes in place, businesses can ensure that all project information and correspondence is captured and accessible by entire project teams. This will reduce the risk of rework and stop project disputes in their track. Plus, you'll have this information to hand years down the line should a liability dispute arise. If you go on to the next slide, please. So this has just been a quick overview of our 2023 State of the AEC report. And as I mentioned, we'll send out the full report in the next few days if you're interested to read it in more detail. So what does this mean for information management and how can it help you avoid disputes going forward? As I touched on earlier, AEC firms are increasingly using tech to boost efficiencies. And as we heard from Milana and Rob, there are huge advancements, especially with the use of BIM. And we're seeing that it's helping to improve safety across the industry, and it can also provide deep insights into existing buildings as well. So while all this new technology and standards like ISO 19650 are making our lives easier and really boosting the industry, we have access to a massive amount of data, both inside and outside of our organizations, that make information management difficult. This sensitive and often confidential information is typically stored in documents and correspondence, and it can often be quite inaccessible, stored in disparate applications by various departments or even different offices. Information is the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's well organized, accessible, secure, and updated. And this is no easy task. But what's the solution? You need a single place where all your project and client information is stored so you can see the complete picture of any given project you're working on. You need a single source of truth, which is also known as the golden thread of information. It's a concept based around bringing all information together, ensuring everyone in an organization has access to everything they need before making any business decisions. It provides better working methods and encourages more transparent communication. This is helping organizations drive change faster without compromising quality, and it ensures that all project and client teams have access to the correct information they need when they need it. Managing project information in one place is critical to avoid disputes, and when done right, allows teams to use their time, resources, and knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. The two easiest ways to create a single source of truth are by removing manual processes of information sharing and increasing information visibility across the board. If we go on to the next slide, please. So one thing to keep in mind, though, is that if your single source of truth is not fully complete, it's not really the truth. And what we've seen in our research report is that while firms are stringent about how their documents and contracts are managed, email is the one thing everyone manages differently. Without the right tools and automation in place, project teams are often left to their own devices. Some people will move emails into other Outlook folders, some save important information to their individual desktops, and others simply delete information if they don't see a need for it any longer. In all of these scenarios, that information is trapped in silos and inaccessible to the wider project team. Losing access to essential emails or not including them in your overall information management strategy can prove detrimental to firms. When emails are managed correctly, everyone in an organization has access to the information they need to make the right decisions at the right time. It provides a much better way of working, encourages more transparent communications, and ensures that all team members have access to a single source of truth. Plus, it removes the responsibility of storing and managing data from one person or department. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So I'm sure everyone on the call today is familiar with these email headaches. Having to question that this isn't what we agreed, having to say things like, you didn't tell us this, when did you tell us this? If you're having to pick up from one of your colleagues, having to admit to a client that you're coming to it a bit cold, having to chase someone, to either ask them to forward you some information, or for them to give you an update before your next meeting. If we go on to the next slide, please. So what we see, some of the benefits of centralized information, they include making your data become more discoverable, helping eliminate human error through automating your workflows. It allows you to establish central version control. It reduces the billable time wasted on searching for or recreating lost documents. It increases transparency and traceability across your teams, and allows you to comply with regulatory and legal requirements. And that's where hopefully Mail Manager can come in. If we can go on to the next slide. So as a bit of background as to who we are and why we're talking to you all today, I'm sure everyone on the call has heard of or even worked with Arup at one point. For those who haven't, Arup are a global consultancy firm who have worked on and designed engineering projects such as the Sydney Opera House, and more recently the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. If we can go on to the next slide. So Arup actually built Mail Manager around 20 years ago for their own staff. The reason being that they had no control over how staff managed their emails. Yes, there were different processes in place. Public folders were trialed, project email addresses manually drag and dropping to the server, but all of these processes relied on the individual to remember to do it, and of course decide on what is and what isn't important, which, as you can imagine, didn't always happen. So the two big issues they had were project teams didn't have up-to-date information on their projects, especially if they were new to a project or one of their team had left. And the other big issue was risk. They had to retain their data for up to 14 years after a project had finished in case of any claims or litigation. There was a chance that the information would be able to be found, but it would have been extremely time-consuming to do so. If we can go on to the next slide. So in summary, what Arup wanted, they wanted to find a system that allowed project teams to search and see all the emails across a project within a few clicks. But we had to take away the time spent filing, and most importantly, the reliance on the user thinking about or remembering to file. They needed something they could turn on overnight that would start learning behaviors and would mean they wouldn't have to discuss email management again. They couldn't find anything that let them do that, so given the size of their IT team, they decided to write their own system. If we can go on to the next slide. So here's some of the customers that we've helped. And they've given us kind of a few examples of how Mail Managers help them on a day-to-day basis. For Gensler, the key benefits of using Mail Manager's email management software are saving 5 hours per week per person in administrative printing, file coding, and hard copy filing. And we've also helped them comply with many quality assurance and statutory standards. Ramble noted that Mail Manager means that important project information is now accessible by the wider team. Even when people are on holiday or leave the business, they are confident in the fact they will have access to all their information years down the line, and is now less time intensive to file emails. So staff can focus on adding value on work that they actually enjoy. With Mail Manager, Ramble have saved approximately 3 hours per week, especially for project members and managers, and we've generally improved efficiency and productivity across its projects. For WSP, who obviously use it in Canada and South Africa, they have seen that better email management processes means that they have been able to retrieve project information in seconds. They find greater business efficiency as they can spend more time on real work and have greater visibility by automatically capturing both sides of the conversation. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So all of these customer stories you've heard today tie back to the 4 key issues we hear from businesses we talk to that are ultimately the reason they want to purchase an email management solution like Mail Manager. Firstly, they're concerned about the consequences they may face if they were to lose any project information or correspondence. Secondly, they or their team spend countless hours every week even, searching for information contained in emails, or they're wasting time on admin, like manually filing project emails to the right place. They're also concerned that they lack control over the communication that is coming into and leaving the business. And for the fourth point, they're seeing that information is trapped in individual inboxes, which effectively makes it unusable. If we can go on to the next slide. So with Mail Manager, we aim to give our customers confidence that any email that has been filed can be retrieved. Businesses can then find any email in seconds, which has the knock-on effect of increasing productivity. And finally, you'll have one central space for all of your project information, helping you create and maintain that single source of truth that we spoke about. Conscious of time, Justin, do we have time for a short product demonstration, or is it best to kind of go into the Q&A?
I think we probably ought to go to the Q&A, unless you can literally do it in 2 minutes.
It's okay. I know I have a hard stop at 12, so I'll hand over for the Q&A.
Cool. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Alrighty. So Rob, Melania, if you want to turn on your cameras and your mics, and we'll crank through some of these questions. So first one for Rob and Melania: how do you manage data security if links to documents are within links in other areas?
That is a good question, actually. For example, the web and this web that is a dynamic one has many different links. So all this document pool that I was referring to is through in our case, in the project that we are doing, is through the CDEs. In this case was Autodesk Construction Cloud. It could be a different CDE, but they all integrate and single sign-on that ensures that only authenticated users can access to the document. So we need to make sure, and this is also a good filter, because if they are not on ACC, every time that they want to access to these links, they are not able, and they will get back to us saying, listen, can I get access to this? So it's like a win-win for us. But of course, there are many specific areas regarding the links that they are a bit complicated, but this is a good question, yeah.
Okay, so are these methods being tested across all types of projects, and do you find some projects work better than others, i.e. building projects against infrastructure?
Yeah, within infrastructure, we didn't test it yet. Buildings is much easier, but infrastructure always implies that other entities like the governments are involved, and these are the ones that they are applying the filters. So from my side, because Melania and I, we are working on similar projects, but we have different projects as well. But this is from my side. I don't know you, Melania, whether you have any experience with infrastructure.
No, we are actually working in some projects at the minute, but yes, because we usually do BIM for like real estate, so we focus more in buildings. But we are actually potentially working on some this year. So I mean, like they tend to use more a project-wise on infrastructure. So I mean, in my opinion, if there is data, there is ways of doing it always. It just depends on the capabilities of the systems that you work with.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm noting Hugh's hard stop at noon. So Hugh, I'll throw a few questions at you now then. Does Mail Manager, quote unquote, read documents attached to emails?
Yeah, good question. So I've seen kind of a couple of questions have come in around that. So our system would recognize that there's an email if the email contains an attachment, and then once it's filed to wherever you're looking to file to, we don't host your information. The email is kind of kept in its native format of MSG file, so the attachment would form part of that email. And then using our search functionality, you can see which emails have attachments, and then you can search for the name, the file type, all those sort of things using our system.
How does Mail Manager manage permissions?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So we would just mirror the permissions of your system. So if you have access to a folder, you can file and search for it. If you don't have access to that folder, you can't even see it's there.
Is Mail Manager cloud-based, or can it operate within an organization's in-house system?
Yeah, so it's designed to fit into your IT infrastructure. So as I said, we don't host any of your information. We don't have access to it. We look to basically act as a bridge, as a way of filing information from your inbox to your filing source. And then once it's there, giving you a quick and easy way to search through it as well.
in Mail Manager, can you have groups and subgroups, i.e. main project and specific stage correspondence, or would it have to be under separate projects?
Yeah, so you can basically map Mail Manager to whatever structure you want to have. If you want to kind of break it up to subfolders, you can do. However, we would generally recommend having as simplistic folder structure as possible, because you'd never go to your folders to search for the information. You'd always search for those emails using our search tool.
Yeah, so I'm talking search. Can a document be found within an email based upon the name of drawing, for example?
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm sure there's a yes to this one. Is there a way to set up a demonstration for Mail Manager?
Oh yes, yeah. So I think on Justin's last slide, there's a link, or there's an email address that you can kind of email, and we'd be more than happy to run you through a demonstration. And apologies for not having time to show you a brief one today.
That's good. So back to Rob and Melania. So how have your colleagues, clients, supply chain reacted to your approach? I think in particular, the streamlined BEP.
Yeah, that was good. That was good because at the end of the day, when you are dealing again and again all the time these type of documents, and you see something that is much lighter, it is always something very positive. So the approach is positive, but of course there are questions like we are having in this Q&A session about, okay, links are always tricky. We need to be careful with this. And I've seen another question about the WSP legal department, our legal department, and because we are dealing with the CDs, usually we own the CDs. It is not very difficult, so we don't need to go through the legal department because we are not providing links that are somewhere. We control the CD, so we control the links, and we control the people that get access to it, and we can remove people, and we can make sure that everything is okay. So yeah, it's quite positive, the feedback.
Yeah,
with some questions, of course. Yeah.
And then keeping on the subject of the streamlined BEP, do you have any evidence that a streamlined BEP secures more engagement or a greater level of understanding?
Yeah, the evidence is that when we started with this type of BEPs, we have more engagement because we do a session to go through the questions that they might have, And before, with these lengthy documents, nobody was having any questions. And so with these type of documents, more dynamic, there are more questions because they are going to the nitty-gritty of the project. And before, it was so lengthy that they didn't have any questions. So the best feedback and the best KPI, if you ask me, is the input from the consultants.
Yeah. Okay. Someone else asks, the report idea is great, but do you have the ability to create a report output if the client deliverable need is a report and not a dashboard?
Yeah, but yeah, of course, we always provide a report because that is the static copy of how the information once at the end of the stage 4, let's say, at stage 5. There's all different ways to create a report. What we have done is, like, of course, we have templates, and they have the necessary information. We also utilize a lot of ACC capabilities to generate this, so everything is in the same place. So we issue the report, and in conjunction we issue links to the dashboard. So the dashboard, of course, we provide premium spaces so we can include anybody that is outside.
Okay. So how do you deal with revision and status codes if this is a live document? You mentioned you check COBE data. Is this done directly from the IFC file?
I think that one is for Melania.
Yeah, I think she might have frozen.
Yeah, I think it's frozen, but I can get to this one. I mean, these are live documents, but every time that something has changed, it will be reflected, in this link. So that's the good thing. When we provide information and we provide a link, it's not static; it's dynamic. So every time that something has changed, we change it, and it goes back to the report.
Yeah. And final question. What is the turnaround time from receiving models to completing those coordination checks?
I think Melania is there.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that is, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just speaking about the COVID data and I got kicked out, so I'm sorry about that. What I
Don't
was
worry.
trying to say is that there's different ways to connect the data. For example, you can connect through the API for ACC and get all the information that is on ACC that include models and also include IFCs. You can also have also lots of ways to export information ACCs. So, for example, WSP is one of the big, I think if it's not, it's one of the biggest clients for ACC. So if our project, for example, they have ACONNEX, we will host the 3D information ACC. And the reason why we do that is because we can basically extract all the data and information. We can create flows on Power Automate also. So we can create our bespoke automation and we can bring the dashboard to ACC. So people will just enter the project and take a look at their dashboards, reviews. And so we can also do that, but we also have different plugins to extract information from IFCs if this is not the case. So of course, every project we will dedicate time at the beginning to set up our dashboard, and that's why we have the different capabilities, and every project will be different, but that is what makes it interesting. So, and I just wanted to say, when we check the COVID data, for example, we don't check if it's there or not. We also validate against the way that this information should be populated. So if the name description must be this, we have rules and calculations on Power BI, then it will bring a fail or a pass sort of thing. So because I've seen that so many times in the past, then you may have unclassified or NA. No, we cannot really pass that kind of information, for example. So I hope that answered the question.
That's great. And then just that final question, what is the turnaround time from receiving models to completing these coordination checks?
I think it depends on how sizable and how many models we have. In my opinion, when I start a project, I start developing, for example, their dashboard. So then I can provide more updates. So instead of giving you an update at the end of the stage, I may have maybe 2 touch points, 3 to review the data. And the more you do it, then you just refresh the data. So you may be able to do it in just 2 days, 1 day, 3 days. So that is why it's good. You do the work at the beginning, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the possibilities of what you need to deliver will also be smaller because, of course, you have developed different dashboards.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, conscious of time, so I will share my screen, go back to hopefully the final slide. So time to wrap up this webinar. This webinar has been recorded, so you can watch it again or share the video with peers and colleagues via the original registration link from later today. For more on WSP, go to wsp.com/en-gb. For more IdeaGen Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. Simply remains for me to say thank you to IdeaGen Mail Manager for supporting this webinar, and thank you very much to Rob, Melania, and Hugh and Stacey for their time and input this morning. And thank you, the audience, for tuning in. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.